Hello everyone. Today we are going to discuss some more aspects of the great novel Les Miserables by the great novelist Victor Hugo. This Les Miserables has been popularized through numerous adaptations for the stage, television and film, including a musical and the film adaptation of that musical. We have seen the plot of the story and how it takes turns and twists, and finally there is an end where the protagonist dies. Now let us see what are the other themes and aspects in the novel that can be discussed. The major theme that we observe is of a conflict. You all understand what a conflict is? Yes? So a conflict is something that you find in the plot where there is an agreement and a disagreement, a fight between good and bad. So you have characters revealing these conflicts. You have multiple conflicts and subplots. The major conflict that we can notice is between the two major characters, that is Valjean, the protagonist, and Javert. Remember Javert? He is the police inspector. Valjean was in the prison for 19 years and then he was released from the prison. But he remains to be an ex-convict. He has that mark on his character. He can never be a normal free man again after being in the prison. So this creates a sense of suspicion in him. Whenever he sees anybody, he thinks that he is a policeman and he would identify his real self. And also, when a person has a mark of being an ex-convict, people also suspect him. Even if there is a change in his character and he wants to become good, anything that he does is looked at with a suspicion. That is common that we observe. Yes, the same thing happens with Valjean as well. Yes?
Ma'am, why is Valjean scared about police inspectors, ma'am? Because he has already undergone the 10 years in the prison. So, I mean, why is he again afraid of the police inspectors?
Yes, because he tries to make a number of attempts to escape. It's not that he completes his tenure and he comes, he escapes. So there is every chance that the police will arrest him again. Okay? And Javert sees the law as an answer for everything. He is an inspector who finds law. He believes in law and there is no exception regardless of how small the crime is. Whether it is stealing a loaf of bread or trying to escape or a murder, whatever the crime is, he feels that a crime is a crime and there should be no excuse. Okay. So, Valjean takes upon himself the care of Cosette. He feels responsible for the death of her mother because she dies when he was being arrested of that shock. So, he feels morally responsible for her death and he thinks that he should take care of her daughter. While taking the responsibility of Cosette, Valjean learns to love and his bitterness of the years of injustice melts away. There is a development of familial love in his character. So he thinks of himself as a convict and makes no excuses. His only reason for avoiding and hiding is to protect Cosette and his fatherly relationship with her, because people still think that he is not correct. So he may be misunderstood, he may not be rightly accepted. So he wants to protect the little girl as a father and he doesn't want Javert, the inspector, to arrest him or to take away the little girl from him. So he tries to avoid and escape. Okay? So an additional minor conflict that occurs between Marius and his grandfather. Remember, the grandfather and the grandson were staying together, but only with the death of Marius' father, he understands what his father's policies were and how his grandfather was not actually accepting his father's views, right? So there is a slight conflict between grandfather and grandson as well. And you also find that Marius does not understand Valjean at the beginning. He does not trust him. He suspects him as well and he does not understand. So there is a conflict between Marius and Valjean also. And finally, we also observe that there is a conflict between Valjean and Thénardier, right? So there are multiple conflicts in the novel. Moving on from conflict, we analyze the characters. You have a number of characters in the novel. As is a general case, a novel generally has many characters. There are plots and subplots in the novel and characters interwoven. So, taking the important characters into consideration, let us analyze the characters. We have Cosette. She is an important character in the novel. She plays a very important role. She is innocent, passive with respect to men in her life, and although she is an important character, she is almost static and flat. She is not dynamic. She does not do anything. She is passive in the sense she receives things, but she is not dynamic in her actions. But nevertheless, she plays a very important role. She is innocent and always subservient. That is, she is very submissive, very docile, very humble. She does not act dynamic. Okay. So, the brief moments of self-awareness occur when she first realizes that she is pretty and when she meets Marius in the garden. Even then, she is powerless to do anything other than what Valjean wants. Though she falls in love with him equally, she does not accept it. She does not say it openly, and when her father wants to take her away, she is willing to go along with him. So, that is her character, where she is very sublime, very submissive. She does not retort, she does not react. Okay? She accepts everything quietly, amicably. So, this passivity of her, being passive in nature, transferred to Marius once they are married. He also understands and empathizes with her character. Okay? After Cosette, we have another girl in the novel, that is Eponine. Eponine is daughter of Thénardier. Eponine is the opposite of Cosette. We understand that there is an exact contrast in these two characters. Okay? In many ways we find this contrast, and the contrast is ironic. Eponine is the legitimate daughter of Thénardier, while Cosette is illegitimate daughter, the offspring of a naive, lovesick girl and an immature student. So, that forms the basic for their contrast. She is with her family, accepted by the family and the society, and on the other side Cosette is illegitimate, not being accepted by both the parents and also by the society. So, that is the beginning of the contrast. And yet again you observe that Eponine is submerged in the criminal element and only escapes drowning in it through her own high spirits and courage born of necessity. Whereas Cosette has almost anything she could want, while Eponine was nothing and she does not have anything. She only craves for the love. And one thing that she does not want is Marius to be married to Cosette. But the fact is that Marius can never accept her. She also understands that truth. Eponine is the daughter of a known criminal, while Cosette is being foster fathered by a secret one. He has also been a criminal. He adopts her. What is a foster father? Can anybody? What do you understand by foster father?
When a person adopts any child, then he is called a foster father.
Yes, right. So, he adopts her and he takes care of her, but he also is an ex-convict. Okay? So, Eponine has an understanding of human nature far beyond her years, far beyond her age. She is matured enough and is not afraid to fight for what she wants. She knows how to manipulate people and situations to her own ends, for her own convenience, and yet she does so without malice. She is a child herself, starving for a touch of humanity and maintaining her own dignity in the face of overwhelming odds. She understands the situation of her family, how her family is not involved in good deeds, but at the same time she is helpless being a part of that family, and she also craves for true love. And she is also brave enough. You have seen that she disguises herself as a boy and she tries to save Marius at the time of war. When there is a bullet aimed at Marius, she comes in between and she tries to save his life, right? Then we have a little boy, Gavroche. He reveals Hugo's soft spot of the neglected waif of Paris. Do you understand waif? Have you heard this word? W-A-I-F. Yes, anybody? No? It is an orphan, a left out child. Okay? So, Gavroche is a waif, and Hugo tries to project how these people are treated through his novel Les Miserables. So, he is also a miserable character in the novel. Like his sister, he is immersed in the criminal element of Paris, but while he uses it to his own ends for survival, he is untainted by it. He has courage and he has no nonsense view of right and wrong. He'll steal from other thieves, but his vandalism is often committed for the benefit of others in need. Whatever he steals, it is for somebody who needs it, somebody who is in help. So he is quick to do favors and just as quick to make sure he is in the middle of all the action. He is inventive, quick thinking, independent and non-judgmental. In short, he is the most lovable character of the novel. What do you understand by judgmental? Yes?
The one who can take decisions on time.
Anybody else?
The one who judges correctly, right or wrong.
That is not judgmental. Judgmental is where you decide the character or nature of a person on the face of it. Okay, that is being judgmental. So, you are not supposed to be judgmental. Don't decide the man's character by his face. Okay, you should understand them from their deeds. You should not quickly jump to conclusion that either a person is good or bad. That is being judgmental. Moving on to Thénardier. He is the epitome of evil. What do you mean by epitome?
Symbol.
Symbol, the height of evil. The highest symbol, epitome is the height. So, he is the height of evil. You see that he is known for his evil deeds. Throughout the novel, you observe that he is known for his evil deeds. A continuous bane to Valjean. He is also the chief representative of the worst elements of French society. During that period, what were the bad elements existing in the French society? You can see through this character of Thénardier. He is the product of laws that turn misdemeanors into major felonies. That is the outcome of a society where the honest poor can barely survive. Because of such people, even those who are honest but poor, they cannot survive, they cannot lead a better life. That is the reflection of the society during that time, the French society at that period. Okay? His own lack of character leads him into a life of crime where his style of living is even worse than simply being poor. Though he loses everything, he does not change his character. He still tries to extract money from people for their expectations. And yet, he is very clever in doing this. He has the intelligence to rise above his circumstances, but chooses to use it for a criminal end. He is always involved in some or the other criminal act, right? Then you have Gillenormand. Remember who is Gillenormand?
Grandfather of Marius.
Yes, grandfather of Marius. Yes. So, there was a political conflict in the family. The son, that is Marius' father, was not with his father because of the disturbance. And he is one of the last of the old bourgeois and he is proud of it. What is bourgeois? Capitalist. Okay. So, he pretends that he is loyal to the old politics, but in reality it is the lifestyle that he misses. He wants to impound all that on his son as well, but his son does not accept. His primary indulgence in his grandson, whose father made the mistake of devoting himself to the cause and army of Napoleon. He was not willing to it. For Marius to inherit a title which had been given by someone, Gillenormand views as an upstart imposer in the most unbearable of insults. The old man's primary weakness is also his grandson's sheer stubbornness. What is stubborn?
Being adamant.
Being adamant, right? So, he does not accept that. He is not willing to accept change, especially when it seems centered in his own household where he cannot ignore it. He cannot accept his own people going against his wishes. Javert is the next important character we have. He is obsessed with enforcing society's laws and morals that he does not realize he is living by mistaken assumptions. A tragic and ironic flaw in a man who believes so strongly in enforcing what he believes is right. He does not want to budge, he does not move from his ideals, he is very strict in following his law. Javert's flaw, however, is that he never stops to question whether the laws themselves are just. He just wants to go by the law. He doesn't think again. In his mind, a man is guilty when the law declares him so. He does not think beyond. Once he is declared as a victim by law, he has to go by it. So, Javed's character is static and relatively flat in that he is capable of thinking only from one perspective. He does not think beyond. He is also unable to cope with change, especially when his personal values are concerned. He is neither good nor evil. He is static, he is a flat character. He is simply the embodiment of law, a personification of law, and an entity that never questions itself and that proceeds to enact its own precepts without concern for its victims. He does not want to show any concern, but he wants to only strictly follow the rules. Now, his pursuit of Valjean is as close as he comes to making a vendetta personal. What is vendetta? Have you heard this term, vendetta? Vengeance? What is vengeance? Taking a revenge. Okay? So, to him, Valjean represents an element which lives outside the law. He is against law. And so, although little or no crime is committed, there is lack of control which Javed sees as a threat to the guiding principle of his life. He looks at Valjean not as a person but only as an ex-convict. That is the only view he has towards him. He does not think beyond that. Okay? Coming to Marius, he is loyal to his father, but he understands his father's character only towards the end. That is towards his death. When he is about to die, he understands what his father actually was. And he is torn between his father's character and his grandfather, right? So, he tries to balance that conflict within him because he was with his grandfather for a long time. He never had any feelings for his father, but when he understands and realizes, he leaves his grandfather and goes because he tries respecting his father's views. Right? So, his primary purpose in the novel is to lure Cosette away from Valjean and to bring Valjean to the point of ultimate self-denial and self-sacrifice. He loves her truly, but he wants Valjean to accept his crime and be a self-sacrifice is where he resurrects himself, right, without knowing his real self. Throughout the novel, he is immature if not somewhat shallow. We find that he is not able to see the truth. He is fixed with his notions and he does not see people beyond that. He grows up quickly when forced to make a decision whether to go on moping in self-pity or to take action in a cause. Even then, if he had not believed he had lost Cosette, it is doubtful whether he would have become involved in the insurrection. He cares for his friends but has been raised in a sheltered environment and so he is spoiled. He does not understand the political ideals of the ABC any more than he does those of Napoleon. Remember ABC? It is the society formed by the students, a group of friends who want to help the people. Yes, the people. He idealizes the glory of Napoleon for the sake of the glory and is likewise in love with Cosette. She is for him the angel of submission and will adore him blindly without ever asking him to justify his desires or opinions. Marius is probably the weakest character in the novel, but is nonetheless a catalyst for Valjean's salvation. Though he seems to be a weakest character, he helps in revealing the true character of Valjean towards the end. Now coming to Valjean, he is the protagonist, the main character of the novel. He is what 20th century critics call an anti-hero. In that, he is an ordinary person who exerts extraordinary effort to not only survive but to protect and defend those who are weaker than himself, the people around him who are associated with him, whom he feels should be taken care of, he also takes care of them. In his self-sacrifice and his lamb to the slaughter image, he resembles Christ. In other ways, he closely resembles Job in that first, he considers himself a victim but gradually sees his own fault and becomes repentant and humble. There is a change in his character, there is a development, there is a growth, he does not remain flat. His fate is severe because he is on the edge of social change. As a type, he represents those who inspire change but are also the victims of its resistance. There are people who try to bring the change, but in the process of bringing a change, there should be somebody victimizing to that, and he becomes a self-victim to that. He is as intelligent as Theonadier, but uses his brains for good instead of evil, right? In fact, we could say that the two men are born into similar circumstances, and that but for the intervention of the bishop, Valjean could have gone the way of evil. It was that one incident which has changed him, changed his character as a whole, and he became a changed person. So, but for the bishop, Valjean also would have remained the same evil person. In fact, he would have had more reasons than Thénardier to do so, as his yellow passport would forever mark him as a convict. Javert, knowing he could not live a normal life anymore under his true identity, apparently expected him to become a part of the criminal element of Paris, and therefore hounded him to the point of persecution to try to pin some new crime on him and have him return to the galleys of life. So, he thought with this background, he would try to commit some crime at a later point of time as well. So, it is better that he puts him in the prison, right. So, Valjean's success in evading recapture is a result of constant vigilance as well as care in maintaining his anonymity. He represents a sense of independence, a noble defiance in man's law in favor of God's law. Hugo alludes repeatedly to religious influences and to the presence of God in the life of Valjean. The very fact that he has changed himself, he has brought a resurrection in his character, is itself an indication of this. And it is the laws of God that seem to be asserting themselves for Javert when the human law fails him. So, he believes in God. The most important theme the novel examines is that of transformation in the individual and as well as in the society as a whole. Jean Valjean, the chief protagonist, is transformed from a misanthropic and potentially violent ex-convict to a man capable of heroic love and self-sacrifice. There is a transformation. You see a transformation in the major character, that is Valjean. We have another important theme in the novel, that is of pathetic fallacy. Hugo uses a literary device called pathetic fallacy. This is a technique which a non-human entity, for this case, for this instance, we have nature playing the role. It takes on human attitudes or traits to accentuate the tension between good and bad. What do you understand by accentuate? To speed up. Okay. So, you see the development in the novel, the growth in the novel, there is a tension, a conflict between good and bad throughout the novel, you observe it. As Valjean contemplates stealing the silver, that is the beginning, the sky is dark as if it were frowning upon the crime he is about to commit. Once he approaches the bishop, however, everything becomes light, as if he were radiating purity and goodness. He sees that in the bishop and he understands what truth is and how bright truth can be. Hugo is able to pass judgment on his characters and their actions without ever breaking the narrative voice. The tone of the novel, how is the tone? It tends to reflect the narrator's empathy with the characters. When describing broader trends in politics and society, the tone reflects Hugo's outspoken views on social reform. What his impressions on the social conditions of that era are were reflected in the tone of the novel. Coming to the theme of love and compassion, you see these also in the novel. Social injustice in the 19th century France, the long-term effects of the French Revolution on French society, change, transformation, self-sacrifice, all these are embedded in the novel. These are the themes that you find in the novel. The motive, you find the plight of orphans, we have seen the young boy, and disguises and pseudonyms. What is pseudonym? A false name, right? Assuming and pretending to be someone else, a mistaken identity, a wrong identity of oneself, right? That is a pseudonym where they disguise, they don't reveal their own self, but they present themselves as somebody else, and you see a lot of this. And of course, there is a motive of resurrection through the character of Valjean. And symbols, Muriel's silver candlesticks, snakes, insects and birds, you see a lot of symbols. And there is also foreshadowing. The novel hints that Monsieur Madeleine is in fact Jean Valjean. You see the representation of that character through this. The mood of the novel is somber. A tone of melancholy predominates even when the events are relatively happy. What is melancholy? What do you understand by melancholy? Sad, a sad tone. Okay, so it's not on a happy tone, but it's a melancholy that you observe throughout the novel. And also towards the end, where the protagonist Valjean meets his death, of course in peace, that the daughter Cosette and Marius have understood his true character, he dies in peace. Okay. We see that Javert is obsessed with enforcing society's laws and morals. He does not think beyond. So how do you look at Javert's character? How do you justify his deeds?
Javert was a person who thought the law was something written with divine wisdom, but he could not get to know that no law or code is written with divine wisdom. And when someone is pursuing his profession, he has to even think beyond the code also. That was a thing which he could not do, and finally which led his internal conflict between doing right or wrong between his profession and thing which he has done led to his suicide also.
That led to his death.
Suicide.
So since he could not balance the internal conflict that he had, whether to release Valjean and justify that he has done the right thing, or to go according to his duty, he was bound with his duty. So since he could not balance this, he ends his life and he meets his death. Thus we have seen the different characters of the novel, the plots, the subplots, the conflict, the themes and motives in the novel, and I hope you understood the character analysis and various themes presented in the novel by Victor Hugo, and you understood it. Thank you.